Even when the New Orleans Saints offense is struggling, still finds ways to be impressive. What does that mean for the New Orleans Saints 2022 season? We got all of that and a little bit of lanyap coming up for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints, your team every day.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Saints, your daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much as always. Make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget that we're free and available on all podcast apps and on YouTube as well. And I'm your host, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson Nola on Twitter, your New Orleans Saints expert. Credentialed member of the media, CrescentCitySports.com, USA Today's Saints Wire, Tuesdays on Locked On NFL, and of course here with you every single Monday through Friday on Locked On Saints. New Orleans Saints have wrapped up joint practices with the Green Bay Packers ahead of their Friday preseason matchup here in Green Bay at Lambeau Field. What did we learn about the New Orleans Saints over the course of those joint practices? We'll get into that in a couple of different ways by starting off with the offense today, where the offense found ways to impress even when it doesn't, even though there's some major concerns around tackle right now going into Friday. What does it mean for the regular season? And will Jameis Winston be ready to play week one? What does it all mean for the 2022 season? Well, let's kick it off right now with our conversation around the offense. And it's finding ways to impress, particularly stars, Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mark Ingram. Those players all found ways over the course of these joint practices, even though the story is all going to be about the New Orleans Saints defense and the Green Bay Packers defense. It certainly has been here on Locked On Saints. It's still very impressive to see the New Orleans Saints find ways on the offensive side to still impress, have good moments, have standout performers. Chris Olave's speed continues to jump off the field, but it's more than just his ability as a deep threat where you can see that. You're seeing it in the short and intermediate areas as well. That was one of the things that we spoke about a lot over the course of the first week of training camp, that drafting Chris Olave is going to lead a lot of people to talk about what he brings to the deep threat and as a field stretcher. And those things aren't invalid. Those things aren't bad. Those things, though, aren't the limitation or the only things that he's going to bring to this New Orleans Saints offense. He should have an impact regardless. Just getting the ball in his hands, whether it be short, intermediate, or otherwise, is going to have an impact on the New Orleans Saints offense in 2022. Today was an example of that. Even when that Saints offense was stymied oftentimes by the Green Bay defense, a fantastic unit, Chris Olave still found ways to make plays. And Chris Olave was the apple of many Green Bay Packers fans' eye going into the 2022 NFL draft, trying to get Aaron Rodgers some kind of weapons at wide receiver. And of course, the Packers still neglected to use first-round selections there, but they still found talent in Christian Watson, as well as, of course, Romeo Doubs. But I bet if you ask any Packers fan after those joint practices, if they would rather Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs over Chris Olave, they would tell you that they'd rather Chris Olave. They can't have him, though. Chris Olave is a New Orleans Saint. And it's good for the New Orleans Saints that he is, because he had some standout moments all throughout camp. And he got a little bit of extra attention. Jarvis Landry was removed from practice today after getting into a little bit of a skirmish with a Green Bay Packers defender, our one and only kind of camp fight, I guess you can call it. I wouldn't really call it a fight. I think skirmish is good. Kerfuffle usually pops up around this time of the NFL offseason, so I guess I'll say kerfuffle too. So when we have all of that and the look at the New Orleans Saints offense, and even though they were stifled and stymied in many occasions, still finding ways to make plays, Chris Olave is at the top of that list. Alvin Kamara is at the top of that list as well. But one of the things that I love that Dennis Allen spoke about and told us about when it came to Alvin Kamara is that sometimes there are plays that we don't pay attention to where Alvin Kamara is doing something impressive or important, right? Like, we're watching where the ball is going. So if Alvin Kamara is running the route over to the right side, but a pass goes deep left or intermediate left over to, let's say, Deontay Hardy or Marquez Callaway, Dennis Allen is oftentimes still keeping an eye on what Alvin Kamara is doing, because Alvin Kamara will go through his motions as if he's the one who made that play, as if he's the one who caught the pass. And you can see the quickness, the explosion, the urgency that Alvin Kamara moves with that has made him special throughout his young career. what has led to him being selected to every Pro Bowl every year so far or something like that. Like, it's just insane what he's been able to do and the level that he's been able to produce at. But those mental reps, those are things that allow him to have the impact that he has over on the offensive side. And those things are not lost on the coaching staff that know to look for those moments. So definitely something I'll be paying attention to as we go through practices and games and things like that, preseason, whatever, when it comes to Alvin Kamara and every other player as well. Because one of the other good points that Dennis Allen made was that if Alvin Kamara is going through those mental reps, if he's putting in that extra work, it sets the standard that every player should be doing that. So are we going to see guys like Dwayne Washington and Tony Jones Jr. and Devine Ezigbo and Abram Smith, who are all running backs vying for that spot behind Kamara and Mark Ingram? Are they going to be doing that as well? That's something that will clearly speak to the coaching staff if they are. And of course, Alvin Kamara is also making plays, right? He impresses even when the offense doesn't. That's my big point. It's my big takeaway here, in case you can't tell, right? The New Orleans Saints have the stars. They have the playmakers to make those plays even when the offense is struggling. So here's why this is important. Here's why this matters for the New Orleans Saints going into 2022. When there are games that the offense is struggling, because there will be, there always are, not only do you have a defense that's able to still keep you in those games, you have stars at every position, skill position on the New Orleans Saints team and at quarterback with Jameis Winston that can make the one or two plays that decide a game for you. If you're locked in a 9-6 battle and you've got a 3rd and long or even a 3rd and short, and you need to pick that up with less than a minute left on the clock, you've got Michael Thomas. You've got Chris Olave. You've got Jarvis Landry. You've got Lucas Kroll, who showed that he can move the chains today. You've got Adam Trautman, whose hands look better and better every time that he's out there. You've got Taysom Hill, who you can just hand the ball to and say, go be mean to the people across that are in different jerseys, and he just runs through everybody. You have the players now that can make those one or two plays that it takes in order for you to win games, even if the unit as a whole is struggling. That's very different than 2021, y'all. That's a very different New Orleans Saints offense going into 2022. And it's one that should not only bring you some confidence as a fan, but it's definitely one that should also bring you a little bit of excitement as well. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at the tackles, though. New Orleans Saints dealt with a lot of injuries at tackle on Wednesday. What does that mean for them? And could there be a big reunion on the way? We'll get to that as well as we get to your questions from our live show from earlier today. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Before we get to that, I want to tell you about our friends over at LinkedIn. Yes, LinkedIn, because as you gear up for fall, you want to find all the right people for your team so you can help out all of your small businesses, make sure they're firing on all cylinders. And LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier for you to find the people that you want to talk with, interview with faster, and now also for free. You can create a job posting in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach a network and to reach your own network and beyond, the world's largest professional network, and over 810 million people. I never even stopped to think about the fact that there are that many people on Earth. There are that many people on LinkedIn. This is why there's also a small business rate for LinkedIn Jobs as well. And it's number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors because of that humongous network that they've got there. I've gotten jobs on LinkedIn myself, just through like the personal networks and stuff like that when I was looking for stuff. When I was working in theater, I used LinkedIn all the time to see who was hiring full-time positions and stuff like that because I was tired of freelancing. I wanted a full-time job. Was able to find stuff like that through LinkedIn. So even I have personal experience through LinkedIn. So I want to check them out. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates that you want to talk to faster. Did you know that every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, family. Thank you once again for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day. Hey, draft week is coming up for all you fantasy football fans. So if you play in all of those, make sure you're checking out Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Dynasty Football, because starting August 22nd, we're bringing you the top 10 list for Fantasy Draft Week. Locked On Fantasy Football, Locked On Dynasty Football, available on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you go and check that out. All right, so New Orleans Saints had a little bit of a concerning situation develop over the course of practice. And for those of you that keep up with practice reports and practice takeaways and things like that on Twitter, I'm sure you had a little bit of a roller coaster today. And it's particularly pertains to the tackle position. So today, Ryan Ramczyk was not present at practice. Landon Young was present, but not participating. He did leave early on Tuesday, so I wasn't super surprised to see him not participating on Wednesday. Looks like everything's okay, but, hard to tell, right? Because we're not getting injury updates, injury reports, things like that over the course of the preseason. We're not required to get those things. So they were already down 2 tackles going in. Then, all of a sudden, Trevor Penning comes walking off with training staff. And then a couple of plays later, James Hurst comes walking off with training staff. I think that's the order. It might have been the other way around. But then eventually also, at that point, right, you've got Lewis Kidd, the undrafted free agent tackle, who played well, battled big time with those snaps. And he battled big time against the Houston Texans as well. Thought he looked pretty good. And then Sage Dockstader were also out there. Those are your starting tackles today for a little while on first team. Lewis Kidd and Sage Dockstader. So you were down Ryan Ramczyk, you were down James Hurst, you were down Trevor Penning, and you were down Landon Young. Then eventually, Sage Dockstader leaves with an apparent injury. So that created a little bit of concern about, okay, well, where do you go next? Now, thankfully for the Saints, as Sage Dockstader was leaving the field, Trevor Penning came jogging back on. Trevor Penning then took basically the rest of the day snaps at left tackle. He and Lewis Kidd got a big time workload over the course of the rest of practice. Dennis Allen commending both of them for battling through those reps. They had some ups, they had some downs, they were beat on some plays, they held up well on others. Usual stuff, right? These are guys that are still developing. But the thing that Dennis Allen really loved was the fact that they kind of battled through all of it. So now you kind of have to ask the question, okay, well, where do the New Orleans Saints go at tackle? Like, is there enough of a concern here? Nick Underhill over at NewOrleans.football tweeting out that early indications effectively are that James Hurst's injury is not of major concern right now. That's what his sources are telling him. So that's good news for the New Orleans Saints, but it might leave them a little light at tackle going into Friday's game. Now, this could go a couple different ways. The Saints went out, they grabbed Derek Kelly off of waivers. Derek Kelly is somebody that's been on and off the New Orleans Saints roster. They've had him on the roster. He's played. He's taken regular season snaps for them over the past couple of seasons, stuff like that. He was with the Jets, ended up getting waived. Now he's back in New Orleans. Or I guess Green Bay, but playing for New Orleans. So we could see on Friday a lot more snaps for Lewis Kidd, which I know there's a lot of Lewis Kidd fans out there. Guys really, really like him. Coming in as an undrafted free agent rookie. I think he's a little bit of a dark horse to potentially make the roster. Hopefully Landon Young was kind of, it could be that it could be that for us, the timing was inconvenient, right? Like he leaves the field early on Tuesday, but maybe he was scheduled for a vet day basically, or some time to rest. I know it's only his second year, but some time to rest on Wednesday. Maybe those two things aren't necessarily connected, that he was away today, or that he wasn't participating today and he had the injury yesterday. We don't know. It could just be timing. But hopefully Landon Young's able to get out there. And hopefully Ryan Ramczyk maybe can also take some snaps. We'll see. I mean, we asked Ryan Ramczyk, like, are you expecting to take snaps on Friday? And he basically told us that he is always expected to take. He's going to prepare as if he's taking snaps. It's just part of the mentality of it all. But certainly he'd love to. Like, he's from here. He's from here in Wisconsin. Like, this is something that he absolutely would love to be able to participate in and be on Lambeau Field and all that. But even if he does, you have to imagine it's going to be one series and then he's off the field. If that, right? Like he's going to get a little bit of snaps, not a lot of snaps. So if Trevor Penning's healthy, good. I don't think you're going to see James Hurst on Friday, even if the injury is minor as we expect. But it does mean you're going to see a lot more Lewis Kidd, and then we'll see what happens with Sage Dockstader. But somebody's missing some time because Derek Kelly ended up getting signed. And I don't know the New Orleans Saints are necessarily done there either. They could also bring in other tackles from free agency. But that's definitely something to keep an eye out on over the course of the rest of the preseason. We've all kind of been watching linebacker because Pete Werner's been dealing with injuries. We've seen Zach Bond dealing with injuries, so on and so forth. So there's been a lot of rotation there, been a lot of change over there. Kiko Alonso and now John Bostic's in the building, all of that. Now at tackle, which is already a position that the New Orleans Saints were a little bit shaky at anyway, trying to figure out who's going to be the starting left tackle now that Terron Armstead's not there. Ryan Ramczyk is still kind of on his ramp up, kind of up and off, as Dennis Allen described it, in terms of what his days look like, which might be why he was away today. He might have just been up yesterday, off today, right? So we'll see if he gets the walkthrough Thursday and then ends up actually participating in the game on Friday. But as of right now, you've got some question marks at tackle that you want to go ahead and get solved, especially while you're dealing with some of these injuries. If nothing else, depth, right? If Sage Doxeter's injury is something that's going to keep him sidelined or something like that. So don't be surprised to see the New Orleans Saints continue to go to the market for more tackles, because this is already a position where there was some shakiness going into the 2022 season. Now you're dealing with a couple of these injuries that like quickly piled up out of nowhere on Wednesday. You definitely don't want to take that lightly by any means at all. Another position that we're watching closely is the defensive tackle spot. Could there be a reunion on the way? Former New Orleans Saints defensive tackle Malcolm Brown recently waived by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who the Saints traded Malcolm Brown to early on last season. Could he be on his way back to New Orleans? Wouldn't be a bad move, and I'll tell you why. And we'll also discuss whether or not we're expecting to see Jameis Winston for week one as we continue on to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints. Now, before we get to that, I do have a very, very important message for you, right? Let's say that you're hanging out with some friends, putting back a few drinks, all of that, and then a few become too many a little bit more quickly than you expected. As the evening goes on, people start to head out, head home, and you think about calling for a ride, but you live nearby. You can get home okay. It's not that far away. It's no big deal. So what are the odds that you're going to get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Well, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you lose your job, you total your car, you hurt somebody, you potentially kill someone. Yeah, it's that serious. And it gets that serious that quickly. So if you're okay to drive, you think you're okay to drive after a few drinks, please think again. Okay? Play it safe and plan ahead. Get a ride. There's apps for it. It's super easy. There's no excuse. Don't be dumb. Okay? It only takes a minute, and one mistake could change your life or someone else's forever. And the ripple effect of that never really stops. Drive sober or get pulled over. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. Wrapping up today's episode of Locked On Saints with your questions from earlier today's live show from this afternoon. Big thank you to everybody who always makes it out to the live shows. Really appreciate y'all doing it. Whether you catch it live or later, very, very much appreciate all of the support. Real quick, I want to tell you to make sure that tomorrow it's going to be kind of a later episode, traveling back to New Orleans in the morning. Going to get there around noon, get settled in, and then we'll do a live episode just for funsies in the middle of the day. So we'll do that around the same time that we usually do the post-training camp live episodes, but just one episode tomorrow, one episode on Friday to help you get ready for the preseason game. All right, so I want to get to your questions here. I want to start with Dre Day Rich, who asked, do you think that Jameis Winston will play week one, or will play week one, regular season week one? Here's what I'm going to say. There is nothing as of right now indicating even close that whatever's going on with Jameis Winston is going to keep him off the field week one. That doesn't mean that something new won't happen. That doesn't mean that something new won't end up getting in the way. And certainly barring any future injuries or any future issues or complications, what I would say is, yeah, Jameis Winston's absolutely on track to be on the field week one of the regular season. It's one of the reasons why you're not going to see him on Friday. Because why rush him back for a preseason game when the preseason game doesn't matter for him? It doesn't count for your record. It doesn't have any impact on your postseason performance or your postseason appearance. Instead, make sure that the most important player on the field for you at the most important position on the field for you is on the field week one. That's what you're going to see with Jameis Winston. Let's go to, I thought this was a really, really good question, and I kind of teased it here a second ago. This is Erica Samples, said, do you think that the Saints should take a look at recently released former Saints defensive tackle Malcolm Brown? So I just kind of told you the backstory around that. Malcolm Brown traded away to the Jacksonville Jaguars, saved the Saints some money when it happened, got them below the roster limit, all of that and everything too. But one of the things that the Saints have kind of had to do since they traded away Malcolm Brown is that they have struggled to find someone to replace Malcolm Brown. So you have a Malcolm Brown-sized hole on the defensive line that you haven't really been able to fill so far over the course of the past couple of seasons, basically, if you include this offseason. So now you have a Malcolm Brown size plug that can fill the Malcolm Brown size hole. So the way that I would say that is, yeah, the Saints absolutely should get a look at bringing Malcolm Brown back. Now, it might be out of their control if they can't, because Malcolm Brown was waived. So the way that waivers work is different than the way that a player that has been released and that is a quote unquote street free agent works. Street free agent, you call them up and you say, hey, you interested? And they say yes, they say no, and then they move on. Obviously, there's a lot more nuance to it than that, but it's like that. When it comes to waivers, it's kind of like doing waivers in fantasy football. There's a priority list of teams, basically. And so if you're high enough on the priority list that your waiver comes through, then great, you get awarded the player. However, let's say that the New York Jets, for instance, put in a waiver claim for Malcolm Brown. The Jets are very likely above the New Orleans Saints, who utilize waiver priority just today to bring in Derek Kelly, which might impact where they are. And then the Jets would end up getting Malcolm Brown because of the waiver priority. So it might be out of their control, but should they try? Absolutely. Because that answers your question in terms of who's your go-to starting defensive tackle next to David Onyemata. It goes back to being Malcolm Brown, which is basically what the New Orleans Saints have been trying to figure out. How do they fill that hole ever since they had to trade him away? Let's go to Craw Gators Goodies. Love that. With injuries to the offensive tackles and linebackers, will the Saints trade to add depth? I think they'll go to the free agent market before they trade. There is the chance that they do trade, especially as teams try to get under roster limits and things like that. And instead of cutting a player, they'd rather trade a player for a 6th or 7th round pick to get something back from him. Think back to like Davro Lawrence years ago. The Saints traded away Davro Lawrence at roster cuts to the Cleveland Browns for like a 6th or a 7th rounder so that they could get something as opposed to just cutting the guy, right? They liked him, but they didn't have the way that the numbers shook out. They didn't have room on the roster for him. So there's the possibility that they could trade, but I don't think you're trading for starters here, right? At either of these positions, you're really kind of just trading for other depth pieces. So if there's players that you really like maybe a Green Bay Packer that stood out to them over the course of this week, then obviously you could pursue that. But I think they'll go to the market first and continue to go to the market up until those releases are set to start happening. But hey, we've seen a few trades over the course of the past couple of weeks. So we never say never here on the show, right? We never say never. Even Nick Vanette returned to practice today after I was like, well, you could probably write and pin that, he won't be around because he didn't make the trip. And then of course he just ended up making the trip a day late and then got there. So, you never say never when it comes to this kind of stuff, but I do think that they'll hit the market before they go to the trade value. DJ Hobbs asked this question yesterday, didn't have the time to get to it. So I want to come back to it. Do I think that Traquan Smith will be cut this year? As of right now, Traquan Smith has an uphill climb, right? That preseason performance in the Houston Texans game wasn't great. He's had some nice moments over the course of today, over the course of these joint practices. So I think he's got a little bit of an uphill battle. But I will tell you this, Dennis Allen kind of highlighted 3 different types of receivers that the Saints have today, and he named a pair of receivers at each of those classifications. The 3 classifications that he used were speed receivers, where he listed Chris Olave and Deontay Hardy. Possession, like good hands, secure, reliable receivers. Strong physical receivers is the word that he used. Had to find it there. Where he listed Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas. So that's really your top 4 players. They're making the roster, right? And then he kind of talked a little bit about the dirty work guys, the guys that do those, the physical catches over the middle, that do the blocking, things like that. And he named in that category Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith. So if I'm asked to pick 6 players that I feel like there's a vibe about, I would probably pick those 6 players right now. So Traquan Smith is still in the conversation because he fits sort of the criteria of what the New Orleans Saints are looking for. But in my opinion, he's got a little bit of an uphill battle going into this 2022 season because of how well guys like Dejon Dixon and Kirk Merritt have continued to come along. All right, let's get to today's lanyard. Diversity of playmakers on defense is unique and should draw excitement. So we spoke a second ago a little bit on how the New Orleans Saints offense can impress with its starters because of the diversity of, and when I say diversity, I just mean variance, high variety of playmakers that they have on the offensive side that can make those 1 or 2 plays that can win or lose you a game, right? Or that can win you a game. More importantly, that's what you want them doing. On the defensive side, what we've noticed is that you have the stars. Demario Davis, Paulson Adebo has been a camp star, but Marshon, Lattimore, Tyrann Mathieu, but you're having new names pop up every day. Malcolm Brown, Chase Hansen, Eric Wilson, John Bostic. Marcus May today with an interception in early team drills on Aaron Rodgers. You're seeing kind of these like just this diversity list of players, right? Very diverse list of players, and this growing list of players, more importantly, that are making impact splash plays on defense. And again, it takes 1 or 2 plays to win you a game. Remember what Dennis Allen said. The team that makes the least amount of mistakes and takes advantage of the other team's mistakes at the higher rate will win games. So if you have those players all around your roster that are able to take advantage of the mistakes being made by the offense, but then your offense is able to turn around and take advantage of the mistakes that are being made by the opposing defense, you win games on Sundays. It's that simple. Coming up tomorrow, we're going to get you all set up and ready for everything that you need to know in terms of what we learned around the New Orleans Saints throughout joint practices. We kind of highlighted some of the stuff today throughout offense. We're going to get over and focus on the defense tomorrow. And then on Friday, we'll get you the players that you need to watch going into the preseason matchup. Saturday, we'll get you that preseason recap bright and early Saturday morning, maybe even Friday night. I don't know. We'll see. So I appreciate y'all, as always, for being here and for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't miss the show tomorrow as well. And of course, I mean, what more can I say, guys? Like, this has been incredible. This has been awesome. Like, just to get happy for a moment, this has been awesome. And so thank you. Just thank you. Make sure you go and check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Check out Locked On Dynasty Football as well. Help you get ready for your fantasy football seasons ahead so you can dominate the competition. Less than 30 minutes every day, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well, including wherever you're getting this show right now. I appreciate y'all so much. Making Locked On Saints a part of your day, a part of your routine, saying yes to the show, saying yes to me. As always, if you see me, say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Learn how the family's doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.